All right. Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to Draglist Live, where we get to bench race with the world's top drag racers. My name's Bill Pratt. It's great to be with you tonight. And I'm so excited because tonight we have Doug Davenport, the man who sets up all the deals in the NHRA. We're going to listen to some great stories about marketing in the past and the amazing things in store for 2025. I can't wait to talk to Doug. You're going to be so amazed. Before we bring him in, let's go to John. John, how are you doing tonight?
You're doing great here, BP, and howdy from Houston, everybody. Please join us on the live chat. The chat board is to the right of your YouTube screen. I'll take notes and pass your questions and comments along to BP and Doug.
Thank you, John. Great to see you, brother. And folks, click the share buttons. Let your friends know we have Doug Davenport live right now. Tell all your friends. And to prove it, let's bring him in. Doug Davenport, welcome to the show.
Bill, thank you very much. It's an honor to be on your show.
So great to have you on. So, racer and marketer to the stars, we're going to cover it all tonight. You've raced, you've won championships, you've been a little kid hanging out with all the drag racers in Southern California, and just an amazing number of deals that you've been behind. We're going to talk about so many deals and partnerships that you've put together, and people have heard about these. I know they have, but we're going to find out that you were the guy that was behind those things. So lots to cover tonight. We got a lot of time. We'll probably go long, folks, because this is going to blow your mind. So, Doug, what were some of the biggest deals that you had in the NHRA that people may have recognized?
The biggest deal by far is the Connie Coletta deal with Mac Tools. That's been going on now for 25 years. So that's been a pretty long deal. V Gaines's deal was 17 years. Some of the other deals, not so long, but those are the biggest ones that I've done.
And they're pretty amazing. And so I'd love to go through the history of each one of the things you put together. Do you have a list of those that you can walk us through?
On the marketing side, I really started marketing back in the 80s. Didn't know what I was doing, but I met some very interesting people that guided me, and I listened to what they said, and I implemented what they said, and I had some success. Nothing like up until about 1999. That was the big one. When I put together the MGM Grand Deal, Connie called me up on the phone, basically said, Doug, been racing for 30, 40 years, whatever it had been. Never had a marketing partner, never had a sponsor. Why don't you go out and try to get me one? We were friends. And so I said, you know what, let me give it a shot. Sure enough, it took me about a month, but I got him the MGM Grand Deal, which was the very first partnership he had. And of course, that went on for 1 year, and then something better came up, which was the Mac Tools deal, which he still has that since 2000. So that's been the biggest deal.
5 years. So other things are big and small. You were there during the Alan Johnson. He gave you a call one day and set some things up. Can you tell us about that one?
He called me up and he said that he was bringing Gary Selzy in as a driver, be a rookie driver. And he said, we have some space in the car. Winston's allowed me. That's when he had RJ Reynolds behind him. And he said, Winston has basically given me the blessing of some space on the car to put some associate marketing partners. I was fortunate enough to put together the Matco Tools deal, AJ, and he had that one for quite a few years as Gary drove that car. So that was a good program too. And Winston was a great company to work with.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
that was a good one.
That was awesome. And we're past the smoking era in drag racing. And I guess let's say the beer wars, we had the beer wars as well, but did we stop? Is there a prohibition on beer and alcohol sponsorships anymore? Or was that just cigarettes? Do you happen to know?
No, you can bring all the alcohol you want out there. And obviously they sell it at the track, and they don't sell cigarettes or anything like that out there, obviously. But you can have a beverage company on there. It's a challenge to get a marketing partner of that nature on a car. And the reason is you got to make sure that you can get one-on-one with the customer, and that's the fan. So you got to make sure they know why it's on the car and go buy the product. And basically, I wish I could do everything like I did my festival business, which we'll talk about that in a little bit. But my festival business was a four-wall deal, and it was a piece of cake to sell it. But I am really going to be actually working or talking to quite a few breweries this year. I think I have 16 or 17 of them here I'll be contacting in the next few weeks.
Wow. Cool. You need any help with a sampler? I'm your guy. I'm ready to go.
That's not I'll let you know on that one. I'll let you know.
Well, Nitrofish is another big title that you brought in. Tell us a little bit about that deal.
Me and Kenny were friends for years, and back in about 2006, 2005 and 6, actually, I don't know if you remember, in 2005, I bought Joe Amato's team. Forgot to tell you that
Okay.
earlier.
Oh
I
my
did buy,
gosh.
I bought Joe Amato's team. We were going racing, and at the 11th hour, it just fell apart. So I ended up piecing it out. But that's when Kenny called me and said, "Hey, Doug, I just bought the Clay Millican team from the Torco Fuel guys." And
Right.
he said, "Why don't you come on board?" So I came on board with them. And then all of a sudden, we knew that he had just purchased Nitrofish. And so he said, "Why don't you run Nitrofish?" So I took Nitrofish over and ran it. And it was by far the biggest thing in drag racing as far as souvenirs and decals and stuff.
Right.
So
Yeah, it was huge.
it was really big. They're not out there as much as they used to be, but they're working. Of course, they own Maple Grove Raceway now. So they do a large bit of Nitrofish stuff out there. But no, we did the Matco Tools deal. And I think I'd like to touch on the ZMAX deal. The ZMAX deal is very interesting. I'm sure a lot of you racers know Bruton Smith. And I actually talked to Bruton on the phone. I knew Bruton. And I said, "I have a proposal for you." And he says, "What is it?" I says, "I got to come down and talk to you about it." He says, "Well, you know where I'm at." And if anybody knew Bruton Smith, he worked at his Ford dealership there, Ford Country in Charlotte. And so I flew down the next day and I met with him. And I flew in a guy that was looking for a marketing partner. That was Larry Morgan. So we sat down with him and we had just a brief meeting. And Ed Ryszowski, who was the guy that ran the ZMAX brand, he came over and joined us in the meeting. And within 2 hours, we had a contract signed. And that's how the ZMAX deal came together. Wow. For Larry Morgan. So we can keep going. The Kindle deal, that's the same thing. V Gaines had never had a sponsor, multi-billionaire. And he said, "Hey, why don't you try to get me something?" Lo and behold, 2 weeks later, Kindle shows up and on his car. And he had that, I think, for either 14 or 15 years.
Yeah. Tell me about that. Was an interesting one. So Larry Morgan, obviously very successful sportsman racer with a well-known, obviously just a great guy. I can see this meeting because just a down-to-earth guy, man's man kind of guy. I'm sure you guys just on a wink and a handshake there. But I didn't know V, and he may have had some sportsman experience, but you didn't hear about V until he showed up and started racing pro stock, or maybe fast door slammers a year or two before that. So how did you get someone without sort of name recognition in the NHRA, this Kendall deal?
I don't know. A lot of people might not know V, but he's a very well-to-do businessman. He's a Fortune 500 type of guy. Okay. And he just basically had all the best equipment in the world, which usually when you have that, you're going to win races. So right. I knew that I wasn't taking a shot here. I know the car was a winning car. So I took it to Kendall Motor Oil and I proposed it to them, and they took a look at it and they said, "Let's do it." And I didn't know how long I was going to go for, but it basically went on a year-to-year basis, I believe, for 15 or 16 years. So I talked to the right people at the right time. The return on their investment was phenomenal because we put a hospitality program together to where we invited local distributors of the Kendall Motor Oil product would bring out their people that bought their product, their consumers. And it was a win situation for many years.
That is just fantastic. And I guess does him being like a high dollar executive himself, did that give him a little more ease talking to some of the marketing partners, do you feel? Or
that's I got to be honest with you. The well-to-do people in motorsports, the drag racing side anyway, it's tough for them to talk to marketing partners.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's just tough. So I would say 99% of the deals that I've done, the talking 99.5% of the time to the marketing partners. They get to meet these guys. They're busy at the races and they got their friends coming and they got their people coming. They don't make themselves very accessible sometimes to the marketing partners.
Gotcha. Very interesting. Speaking of other people talking, let's go to John and see who's out there on the chat tonight. And again, guys, to reiterate, I put this out on YouTube and Facebook a little bit ago. But if you have any questions about your marketing program, Doug has kindly said that he is going to offer some tips and tricks tonight. So if you want to kick off some of those questions on the chat, we'll get those passed on. But John, who's out there so far, my friend?
Coast to coast tonight. We've got a real nice crowd here.
Love it.
Pete Mariello in Los Angeles. He says, "Looks like you're live now." And Randy Johnston says, good evening, gents from NorCal. Ted Papasina is with us tonight. He says, hi, all.
Eddie.
Malinsky from New Jersey is checking in with us. And Jack Red is here, and he says, hi, everyone. And Kenny Youngblood is here, and he says, no one knows the sponsorship business better than Doug.
All right. Hey, Kenny.
Kay Thurkelson is here with us tonight, and she says, good evening, gents. Kenny said to ask Doug about the first junior dragster race.
There you go. Thanks, Kenny.
That's a good one. That's a good one. That's a good one. Would you like to hear it?
Sure, let's go for it.
It was at Lions Drag Strip, I believe, about 1968, 69. Mickey Thompson had created these little mini dragsters, and they were going to race Mickey Thompson and Don Perdome. Well, Mickey was a little bit heavy, and when he got in his little lightweight dragster, it kept doing wheelies on him because it was like a front motor car. So he couldn't get it into the staging beams. I'm standing up there. I'm the little kid with Kenny Youngblood, and Kenny says, Doug, go jump in that car. So I ran over and grabbed Mike Van Sant's helmet, and I jumped in that little mini dragster. And by the way, people don't know this. That was the very first junior drag race in the world. Wow. There was nobody even thought about it. So I got in that dragster and I staged up against Perdome and I beat him. And you know what? That was the best thing in the world. But it was something, the crowd, it was capacity. They went nuts. So that's how that happened, the very, very first drag race. So that's all because of Kenny. Kenny's the one that pushed me in that car, said, go do it, Dynamic. Because, by the way, Dynamic has been my nickname from Kenny Youngblood since I was about 8 years old.
Dynamic Doug Davenport. We got it here live, folks. I love it. You're probably the only guy in the stands. Back in those days, lighter than Perdome, because he used to be a rail.
Yeah. Wow.
Right.
Awesome. That's a fun one. That's a good one.
John, anybody else with a thought?
We are caught up for the moment. Oh, wait a second. He says, Kenny said Doug was lighter than a snake. Lighter than snake.
Oh, gosh, that's funny.
I love it. Well, fantastic.
About Don Perdome.
Yep. Get your questions and comments in, guys. Where Doug's here to answer it all. Doug, let's go to the next thought here, which was, tell us about this amazing Big Daddy Don Garlits story from 2001. That is not to be missed.
That was a very interesting deal. I had a friend of mine that lived here in Las Vegas named Gary Clapshaw, who owned a Top Fuel team. And the prior year before that, 2000, he got runner-up at the U.S. Nationals. Don Garlits wanted to run the 2001 U.S. Nationals, but his car would not pass tech. And he found this out the week before the race. Gary Clapshaw reached out to Don and said, Don, I am pre-entered into the event. And if you would like to drive my car, if we can find some money, that would be great. And Don says, I'd love to drive your car. We got to get some money. So I had just got off a cruise. It was Sunday afternoon. I got off a cruise and I got a call on my cell phone from Gary saying, hey, Doug, we're heading to Indy next week. I said, yeah, I'm going. He said, I've got a little issue here. I said, what's the problem? He says, I'm not going to drive. Don Garlits is going to drive the car if we can find some money. So if you have anybody you know that would want to put up a few bucks to cover fuel and tires and maybe a few parts, that would help me out tremendously. I said, let me work on it and I'll get back with you. So thank God it was on my cell phone. I had numbers on there and I called a gentleman named Eric Mullenmeister. He was the head guy at Matco Tools on a Sunday, had his personal cell phone. And I told him that I had Big Daddy Don Garlits wanting to drive a dragster next week, and we have no marketing partners on the car, no sponsorships. And he says, what do you need? And the reason that came about is because it was Mac Tools' first year sponsoring that race. So obviously Matco Tool would put a dig in any way they can because it's their biggest competitor. And I said, I don't know exactly, but if you're interested, I will call you back. So I called Gary and I called Don. I said, I got us a marketing partner. What do we need? And Gary said, we need uniforms. We need fire suits. We're going to need an extra pit area. We need a motorhome. We need this, T-shirts. He says, Doug, he says, I'm not the guy that does that. You are. So make a long story short, I got home, got on an airplane first thing Monday morning, and I flew to Indy. And the first thing that I did is I met with the designer there, Fastline Graphics, I believe it was called. I said, we need to design a top fuel car, a Matco Tools top fuel car. And they said, I said, for Don Garlitz. Oh, it was all hands on deck. We had that thing designed probably within an hour and a half. And I said, this thing has to be wrapped and ready to go Thursday for media day. And they said, no problem. Thank God I had good friends at Simpson. I called Simpson up. I said, I need fire suit for Don. I need probably 12 uniforms and pants and everything. And they said, when do you need it by? I said, Indy's this week and I need it in 2 days. No problem. We'll have it there. So then I called a good friend of mine that was running Monaco Coach. And I said, Monaco Coach, I talked to the guy, I said, I need a coach for Don. I says, I'll rent it. I'll do it. I said, no, if it's for Don Garlitz, we're going to bring out a brand new coach for Don. So then I called NHRA to drop the ball and said, hey, I need to have an extra pit space. Whatever it's going to cost, I'll pay for it, because we wanted to put a canopy up there. And they hem-hawed, but they said, let's do it. So we put the deal together, and come Thursday afternoon, we made it to the press conference downtown Indy, and there was Don in his beautiful new Matco Tools pit crew uniform shirt. Being a Mac Tools event, it was a little controversial, but anyway, Don didn't care, obviously. We put the deal together. I requested a couple more police officers from NHRA on Thursday afternoon because I knew we were going to be mobbed. And they had a couple police officers staged over there. So anyway, we got the car done. Don wanted to run 300, and we got him to run 300. But the big thing was to put Don against Shirley. And if you weren't there, you have no idea. But by far, I think it's to this date the single biggest drag race ever between Don and Shirley in qualifying. The grandstands were full. It was 200 deep on the starting line. And the rest is pretty much history. I think I told you we sold a couple thousand shirts. I won't tell you how we did that here, but we sold a couple thousand shirts there. And it was the biggest one weekend event for Don that he ever had in his life. It was also by far the biggest, I think, and don't hold me to this, but I think we garnered about 11, maybe 10 or 11% of the total television coverage for the event was on Don Garlitz. So
that is fantastic.
Put that deal together in just a day.
Great to got it done in about four days. John, go for it, sir.
Kenny just posted Garlitz breaking 300 thanks to Doug getting the funding can be seen in the main event entertainment production of Big Daddy Returns on YouTube.
Love it. Thank you, Kenny. We're going to get main event video on here with Kenny and his friend Dean and our friend Dean. One of these days, we'll get that set up when Miss K is coming. But thank you. We'll check that dude out. And
a good guy, by the way, Dean Papadeus. He's a great guy. I've known him for 30 years. He's a great guy.
We all came up in that early pro mod scene, and he was doing a lot of videos of those things. As I was like, fantastic. Yeah, Big Daddy Don Garlitz, 4.72 at 303.37 miles an hour right there. Had to go to look at the drag list to remember. Yeah. But fantastic story.
And a real quick, I was at the starting line where they come back on the push road, and I stopped the car there, and I got his mother on the phone.
Oh my gosh.
And Don was crying, and she was crying. And I said, here, Don, I got your mom, because I called Pat. And I said, I got your mother on the phone. And he goes, Mama, we did it. We ran 300. And he was crying. And right there where you pull around the bend at the starting line, I stopped him, and he got to talk to his mother on the phone to let her know that he went 300 miles an hour. It was very touching.
Oh, it was fantastic. Yeah, it was just amazing. From Big Daddy Don Garlitz to local racers, our weekend warriors who are out here. A lot of them racing are in our audience tonight. A lot of folks will be watching this either tonight or in the future. How can local racers, or nobody's racing cheap these days, everything's so expensive. How can racers help market their efforts or maybe get a little bit of help? What are some tips and tricks, Doug, that they can leverage to work with marketers to help them out of it?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'm glad you asked that, Bill. I think a lot of racers don't understand that the manufacturers that manufacture the oils, the spark plugs, the tires, and stuff like that you use on a race car, they're behind the sportsman racer 110%. And I think the biggest problem for sportsman racers is they don't know how to ask. And I think if they were to send an email, maybe a picture of the car, send a pamphlet in an envelope, and just say, hey, I'm a sportsman racer, but maybe I do attend a few national events or what have you. We love your product. We use it. Be happy to put a decal on the car. Can you work with us possibly on some product? I would say that 75% of the companies that they contact will definitely contact them if they're putting a decal on the car, if it's a nice car and a nice operation, and they're going to want to be a part of it because that's how they build their business. So it's not rocket science. You just got to have the gumption to put something together and contact those people. And all those people can be found online, no problem whatsoever. And I got to tell you, not that I ever really wanted it, but I took it. But every decal on my car that I've ever had on any race car, there was always something for it. But I always gave them everything I could. And then I'd send them after race results. I'd send them pictures of what people in the grandstands, just little things like that. And impressions mean a lot. If there's the thing called television and people pay millions and billions of dollars for advertising, print media isn't as big as it used to be, but they still spend a lot of money on that. So this is the cheapest way for a company to advertise is to get their decal on a race car, sportsman racer especially, and be able to see that. And you'll be surprised what they'll do for you. Seriously.
That's great because I wonder how many people just don't think to ask, right? They just, they're never going to go for it, or I can't write, or Chat GPT these days, you don't need to write. Write me a paragraph to a marketing partner that talks about my car and what I can do for them. And there you go.
I've always said, if you never ask, you're never going to get that. And that's one thing about me. I've never, ever in my life, 68 years old, I've never met a stranger. You know that from talking to you today for the first time.
Yeah.
I've never met a stranger.
I love it. That's great stuff. And folks, so let's check with John. John, do we have any other questions from the gang for now?
I'd like to say I'd never heard the whole story on Don Garlett's getting that ride for the U.S. Nationals that year. And I was really happy for him. And I didn't know you were involved in that, Doug, but you did good, man. That was a great thing y'all did for Big Daddy. And Kenny Youngblood said, I say Doug Davenport has a rare and valuable gift. He smells money and knows how to get it legally.
Yeah, that's
Randy Johnston said that was a great Big Daddy story, and I agree that it couldn't have been said better. And I'm really glad you said that because I never knew the whole story behind all that. When they interviewed Garlitz, he said, I want to thank Matco Tools and I want to thank Gary Clapshaw. And he went on and talked about getting that dragster for that race. And I never knew the whole story, but I do now. And thank you.
You bet. That's really amazing. Someone's got to be behind the scenes, and there's so many unsung heroes in the sport. But the guy who brings the money and makes the deals, that's pretty huge.
Yeah. Let me say something. I don't know how many people's watching right now, but chime in and ask me a question. Don't be afraid, because this is why you're probably not getting what you need. Just chime in. I'm here. I don't charge a dime to answer your questions. I don't work for any teams. I don't charge anybody anything until I get them something. So it's my dime until I get them their return on their investment or whatever, because they're the one that spent the money. So if you guys have any questions out there, if you're all listening, just ask me anything. I'll be happy to give you an answer, and hopefully it'll help you. And at the end here, I'll be giving out my new website and my email. You guys can feel free to contact me. And once again, I don't charge you sportsmen. I'll probably help you for nothing because it's not that big a deal. I can make calls, but if I don't know who you are, I can't help you.
Pete
Awesome.
Mariello just said he's enjoying the subject and the show tonight. And let me just mention that most of our chat board people just say good evening, but they watch the show and they take it all in. And usually when the show is over or when it's ending, they say, hey, man, that was great. When they talk about it. But it's not all that easy to get questions out of them. Sometimes they don't.
By the end of the show, they'll know where to reach out, though. So we can go from there.
Absolutely.
Doug, thank you, John. And guys and gals, hit us up with questions. But I wanted to talk to you, Doug. I wondered if you could share some of your knowledge about general marketing that most folks don't know. Like you were telling me earlier about the push-pull situation is not the right word, but the push-pull concept with marketing in supermarkets, and how like Roland Leong and you worked with them in the Hawaiian Punch Del Monte folks to make that work. Can you walk us through that? I found it fascinating.
Yeah, basically what happened on that is Howard Shelley and Mike Wilson put that deal together. They were the head people of Del Monte. I actually didn't put that deal together, but they were my good buddies, and they had explained to me how the whole program works and why it was so successful. And these two guys were so much fun on the road together. We had a blast together. But basically, in the marketing world, there's a couple of really key buzzwords that really work, especially if you're going for that high dollar marketing sponsorship. And that is, market share is very important. And the way you create market share is the example I gave you earlier, John. If you'd like me to explain that, I will. Would you like that?
It would be, I think so. Yeah. I'd
Yeah.
love to hear.
So what happens is when you see the name on the side of a race car, like for example, let's use a Hawaiian Punch, because that was a perfect example. And by the way, that deal fell over because Mike Dunn was driving that car at one time too. That kind of fell over to the La Victoria salsa deal. If you remember Mike Dunn and that dragster,
Yep.
that was the exact same marketing technique that made that deal work for years. So what happens is when a company like Del Monte or La Victoria Salsa or whatever it might be, when they come in and they put their name on the side of the car, they need a return on their investment. So what has been done in the past is you take a grocery store, whatever grocery store it may be, a Kroger or what have you, a Vons, whatever it is, and the market, they have what's called end caps in the store. So Del Monte, for example, this is the story that came to me, and this is one that I've always lived by. Del Monte went to the store brand, I think at the time it might have been Ralph's or whoever it was, and said, we would like to have an end cap for 10 days, which gives them 2 weekends. And we want to put Hawaiian Punch on the end caps. So that's going to be full of Hawaiian Punch. Now, when you go down the soda pop aisle, where all the soda pops are, it's probably about 100 foot long. They got soda pops forever. You'll notice that Hawaiian Punch only had one space there. So they were 4 high and probably 4 deep. So that gave them 16 six-packs there. So that was their market share, was that tiny little area there. That's all they got. So what happened was, after they did this program, and by the way, Hawaiian Punch enticed, say, Ralph's by saying, we'll put your name on the quarter panel of the race car for no charge. Just you got to put the product in the store. We'll put your name on this. So we're going to drive people to your store. And they're not going to just come to your store to buy Hawaiian Punch. They're going to come there to buy potato chips and whatever else they need. But one thing they're going to be looking for is Hawaiian Punch, because they've seen it on the race car. So what happens there then is, as the consumers pull that product off of those end caps, they come back a week later or 3 days later, or say a week later when there's no more end cap. And now they go down the soda pop aisle. What do they see there? They see Hawaiian Punch, and they see it 4 high by 4 deep. So they pull it off the shelf. It's a push-pull program. Hawaiian Punch, push the product into the store. The consumer's got to pull it off the shelf. Every retail sector, everything in a grocery store, a liquor store, an automotive store, it's push-pull. They push it in, you got to pull it off. So what happens is, all of a sudden, the Hawaiian Punch aisle, the little single aisle, starts running out, and it's running out on a daily basis. So what happens is they give them another spot, maybe 2 more spots. Now what happens is they didn't make the row longer. They didn't add another 10 feet onto the row. What they did is they took 2 consumers or 3 consumers off of that shelf, because Hawaiian Punch got more market share. And all of a sudden, when you start looking at the customer base and you start looking at the numbers, let's just say that Hawaiian Punch in that area had a 1.1% market share. All of a sudden, after we do this end cap, after we race, after we drive the people in, within 30, 45 days, they're jumping up to 2.5 to 3% market share. So Del Monte sits back and says, wow, was this a good deal? So how many other stores can we go to? Meanwhile, they keep shelling out, rolling all this money, going, let's go racing, buddy. This is working. So that's the way the consumer brand works. And a lot of people don't understand that. And that's why, if I'm going to be working on some grocery stores, I'll be quite honest with you. And I'm going to be talking to a lot of different manufacturers. And I'm going to say, hey, listen, can I get an end cap? That's all I want. And I'm going to tell them what I'm going to do. Because even though that was back in the 80s, that still works in 2025. So that's how I'm going to drive. And then I'm going to take it to a marketing partner and say, look, I got an end cap. That's priceless. I'm going to tell you one of the big ones I'm going after Walmart. I'm sorry, but I don't mind saying it because I know the people down there in Brenton, Arkansas. I'm going to go after Walmart and say, give me an end cap. Just give me 3 end caps a year, and I will put you on the map. So there's your perfect example.
That's fantastic. It's fascinating. And the interesting thing is about those, and I used to work, I'm back in my teen days, 50 years ago, I worked at an A&P, the old Atlantic and Pacific Tea Company stores. It's been bought out a million times by bigger companies. But back then, we didn't really do it the way we're like now. It's like corporations come in like Pepsi and Coke, right? They negotiate for that space, right? On those Zencat. Back then, I think we just filled what we got when we got it. And they probably had started to do some of that rudimentary work now, but the modern stores now, pretty much every inch of those display cases is negotiated for. Isn't that the case?
Oh, that's 100%. And what people got to remember is those people who came in, they probably come in the customer probably comes in on a weekly basis. But the thing is, they come in now. One reason they come in is to buy, let's just stick with Hawaiian Punch, just buy Hawaiian Punch. The same thing with La Victoria Salsa was the same thing. They did an end cap. They did the same exact model, and it went through the roof. And it's a funny story because I think the parents passed, and it was a brother and sister that owned La Victoria Salsa, and the sister hated drag racing. But the brother just kept shoving it in their face. Look at the numbers. And if you knew this guy, he was a great guy. He wore shorts and a t-shirt at all the races. He was a CFO or CEO of the company, but his sister hated it, but he loved it. And the numbers were there. So that went on for several years with Mike Dunn, if you remember that.
I love it. That's great. And speaking of Mike, we chatted with him at Bruce Larson's house a couple of months ago. He will be coming on sometime this year. Just got to get the dates right. That's fantastic. And I learned so much talking to you before the show and definitely wanted to share that. But let's take it back to like legit. We mentioned a little bit with Kenny Youngblood earlier and when you were a little kid. Take us back to your childhood in Southern California, because you were right there and you were there in the middle of Bellflower, and just that town alone envisions drag racing. Tell us about a day in the life of Doug Davenport, dynamic Doug, in Bellflower, California, and some of the people you got to hang out with.
You name it, I hung out with them back then. There was the Condit brothers, the Beaver brothers. I remember John Force coming into my skateboard shop when I was 18 years old saying, "Hey, Doug, can you sponsor me this weekend for $250 for the entry fee for Orange County Raceway?" All those guys, that's what they did. They got off work at night and they all come over, mostly to Steve Pluger's. His shop was across the street from my dad's business. And then behind us was Dick Olson's Competition Fiberglass, right behind us in the alleyway. And then right on the corner behind that was Don Kirby's paint place. Wow. That was the mecca of drag racing. And basically, you probably don't remember Roger Lindemood, but he was across the street the other way with the Color Be Going. There was so much stuff going on. And me being a little guy, I used to ride my bicycle over to the race shops at night. And it was neat because whoever had the pickup truck would take me home. The last person to leave would take me home. And being a little guy and being around those guys, I heard some of the best racing stories ever. But the people were just fantastic. And Bellflower was where really a lot of the drag racing started. That was SoCal. Woody Gilmore was only about 8 miles. Velasco was around the corner. Gary Densham his racing team was right around the corner. But then he didn't have a funny car. He was running a roadster or something of that nature. But everybody was there, and I just got hooked. And then I'm meeting guys like Kenny. And I told you when I was like very young, 8, 9, 10 years old, I entered a lot of model contests. I used to build the little model cars. And I would spray paint them, and I won every show because Kenny would hand letter all my model cars. That we cheated a little bit because you're supposed
to about bringing in a ringer.
Yeah, I brought in Kenny. He used to hand letter my little cars. A lot of Invader cars were done back in the day.
Oh, a lot of Van Sant stuff. Oh, fantastic.
A lot of Mighty Mike Van Sant, my hero.
Well, I think we all around the world and certainly in the country saw your neighborhood in the magazine pages, because the famous picture of Kirby's with him and the letterer standing out front of all the
that's
the
Nat Quick. That was Nat Quick.
Nat Quick in 1972. That was amazing. But tell us about your trip to Indy with a certain Top Fuel team.
Which one would that be? Oh, that one. That's something that I don't know if I want to remember that, but I think I told you it was back. God, it must have been 71, maybe 70. I was friends with Jeb Allen, and I knew his dad and his brothers. And he said, "We're going to Indy in next week or 2 weeks." And I said, "Can I go?" I asked my dad. He said, "Hey, if you want to go." Well, I didn't realize what I got myself into, but sure enough, it was a guy drove the truck. I think Les was driving the car, and I think his wife went with us. And me and Jeb were in the back of the pickup truck with a camper shell on from Bellflower, California to Indianapolis. Oh my God. We had a furniture mattress back there in the back, like a bed mattress. And we rode all the way to Indy and back in the back of that pickup truck. Jeb will remember that too if you ever get Jeb on the air. That's quite a
I'd love
story.
to. Jeb is amazing. One of the, and many people don't know this, one of the few Top Fuel racers or any type of racer who's won world championships in all three major organizations. Because one of them's IHRA's trying to come back. AHRA's gone, but he was the AHRA world champ, IHRA world champ, and NHRA world champion in Top Fuel. And just an amazing guy.
Yeah,
Jeb Allen, man.
He was a great guy. He still is. I'm sure he's still with us, but I haven't talked to him in years. But that's just one more story.
Amazing. Let's go to John and see if anybody else has offered any questions or comments on the chat. John?
We don't have any new questions or comments, but Rich Panicaro, our buddy in New Jersey, showed up. And
Hey, bud.
I'm going to get in touch with Rich later. I have his graphic done for him. And I'm really enjoying this interview. The stories that you're telling us, Doug, has just opened up a whole vista of information that I had never heard before. And I'm just really glad you came on the show with us.
There's a lot more stuff going to happen. And like I said, I've done a lot in drag racing and I'm proud of what I've done. I've won the championship. I raced the Hot Rod Heritage Series. That was just, I don't know if we want to talk about that for a second, but
yeah, let's jump on that here in a minute because there's a couple more things to talk about, but definitely want to talk about that. John, what do you got, sir?
Yeah, we got a comment here from Kenny Youngblood. He said, Doug, would crew chief the Invader win Bakersfield with his nostalgia dragster, win MT Stadium race with his quad?
Yeah, the Mickey Thompson Stadium race.
Everything we did, we won. Kenny was there on almost every bit of it. He was in the winner's circle when I won the March meet. I think he was no, he wasn't in the winner's circle when I won the championship, but he was in the winner's circle. We did the Mickey Thompson Grand Prix Series. We won that.
Where's the hat? Do we see him? He should be right back there somewhere.
I'm sure he's somewhere. But he's been involved in just about, if anybody was going to write a book on me, he would have to be the one to write the book because he probably knows more about me than anybody. That's just, God is my witness.
He said they asked you about the hydro seat.
Oh, that was an interesting story. That was a sad story, but in drag boat racing, I forgot all about that. I didn't put that in here, but I started a company called Hydrotech back in the mid 80s. They canceled drag boat racing because a lot of people were getting killed. And after Cecil Florence got killed in Phoenix, they said, that's it. IHRA, or not INDBA, Hot Boat, IHBA, and a couple other organizations, they had to stop drag racing because they couldn't get insurance. So I said, there's got to be a better way. So I came up with an idea, and I think Kenny drew it, and it was called a hydro seat. And what I did is I basically took a Top Fuel cage, funny car cage, and I put little bars on the side with these little clamps on it. And it was basically, it would fit in on the running rails of a Top Fuel hydro. And you would basically be strapped in this. And I took it up to DEAST, safety equipment at the time. That's a kind of an old word, DEAST safety equipment, but took it up to them. And I said, I need to build some flotation. And Jim DEAST said, take my shop, whatever you need. If it's going to save lives, take my shop. So we invented this thing. And believe it or not, I think, yeah, Kenny was there when we tested it because I tested it off a diving board. We threw me off a diving board and we wanted to see how it was going to float you. Unfortunately, the first time we did it, it floated me face down. That didn't work. And I was the one strapped in the seat. But yeah. I think Kenny jumped in and I think Don jumped in and flipped me back over. So back to the drawing board we went and we corrected that. And it was the very first hydro seat ever made. And very unfortunate, but it was supposed to be in a boat at, I think it was Cascade Lake with Billy Todd's boat. And for some reason, it just didn't get in that weekend. And Billy succumbed at that race, unfortunately. But it did get put in Ron Braxman's car, Ron Braxman's dragster. And up in Bakersfield, I think he was going not quite 200, but he flipped and he was in the cage and he rolled. And guess what? He walked away from it. So
Wow.
that was the very first you got to be careful using the word safety, because safety means to protect from injury. So that was the very first protective cage or safety cage that was ever built. And then, of course, from then on, within a year, they had the capsule. So, and actually, me and Kenny took the cage, we put it in a dryer, an empty dryer box, your dryer for your at home, like washer dryer. We put it on an airplane and we took it back to K&K Insurance at Fort Wayne, Indiana. And we put it right in the middle of the boardroom, right on top of the desk. And we told these people, listen, if they put these in drag boats, we're not going to have the deaths anymore. And sure, lo and behold, they reinstated drag boat racing because of that seat.
Wow.
So that's where that came from.
That's a fascinating story. And thanks so much for that. I guess I have a question that seems simple now, and it's going to make me sound like an idiot, but was drowning the primary cause of those drag boat deaths? Or I was imagining it might be impact with the water at those speeds, but what was it's kind
of a little something that I got from the Coast Guard, Bill, a little something I got from the Coast Guard. Water at 63 miles an hour has the same shore hardness as concrete.
Right.
So you're going to slide on top of the water until 62 miles an hour. Then you're going to surf. So this was basically just like in a race car. If it flips a top fuel car, something, the roll cage is going to protect you. So up until 63 miles an hour, this is going to protect your head. Now it's not going to protect your legs, okay, because it just couldn't make that. But it would protect your lower or your upper extremities 100%. And then at 63 miles an hour, it's going to start to submerge. It won't go underwater, though. It will never go underwater unless all the hydro stuff came off it, but I don't think it can. It'd be impossible. So you would just be laying there in about a 45-degree angle, just like that, just floating there. You might be unconscious. At a hook at the top, a round hook at the top, so they could come in and just lift you right up and put you right in the rescue boat.
That's awesome. As long as you're 45 degrees, as long as your face is above the water, that's important.
Yep, that's Ron Braxma proved it at 180 something miles an hour up at Bakersfield when he crashed.
Wow. Kenny posted that y'all tested it in his pool.
It wasn't fun the first time.
He said it was the predecessor to the capsules.
Exactly.
All right. Wow, that's just amazing. You got any other comments out there, John, for us?
While you're up for the moment.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. So you're about to increase your presence in the National Hot Rod Association in 2025. Tell us about Dynamic Marketing Partners.
Well, I've been retired for a long time and I'm bored. And I've told my girlfriend, Deb, she's with me 100% on this. And I told her I'm going to get aggressive again and get back in this pretty much on a full-time basis. And I have several top fuel teams. I have several funny car teams, several pro stock teams, and several bike teams that are obviously looking for funding. As we're well aware that the car count's not always the best at some of these races, and we need to get 16 cars out there that are fully funded that can really put on a good show. I eat, sleep, and breathe NHRA. I think it's a great organization, and it's the place to be. If you're going to be in drag racing, it's the place to be. My goal is to try to bring in more money to the NHRA, especially the teams, and get those grandstands packed again and get the consumers buying the products that are on the racing team. I think I told you, I don't know, I think I have over 60 companies that I'm about to embark on. Unfortunately, it's changing the name. It took me a little while to get that all done, changing the corporation. We do have a website that's going to be coming out in probably 2 weeks. So I'll give you that whenever you're ready for it. And I think we're going to be very successful. I think it's something that's going to really work. And with NHRA, in a perfect world, with them working with me, hopefully on the midway part and to keep the marketing partners happy, we're going to make this a win situation for the teams, for NHRA, for Dynamic Marketing Partners. Everything's going to be a win situation. And the key to me is I don't need anybody's money. I don't do this for money. I do it for the passion of the sport. And I am not asking one race team. I'm not asking anybody for any money. I'm putting up every dime to promote and market this to get it to the racetrack. And once it gets to the racetrack, that's when I get paid my commission. But right now, it's my dime, and I am on a vengeance to really get I think NHRA where it needs to be. I watched NASCAR last night. It was fantastic. There's just no reason why NHRA and the people out there can't be like that. They have everything there. They have the facilities. They have everything. Kudos to them for providing these racers the facility, a safe facility for people to race in. And I don't think it's as hard to sell as people think. So I'm positive my cup's always half full. So when I go in to talk to these people, there's not a question. I firmly believe that I can sit in any meeting with any Fortune 500 company in this country, and there's not a question I can't answer about drag racing or about why I want them involved in drag racing and why it's going to work for them and their return on the investment. And that's pretty much our motto here at Dynamic Marketing Partners.
That's fantastic. So you take any money from any of the racing teams, and I guess you're putting this out there. You've got a number of them written down, but if there are any other pro or perhaps semi-pro teams wanting to move up, we'll put out the web address here for folks to reach out to you. But what is it that you do require of these pro teams? Because you can't, and I'm just throwing this out there, over the years, a lot of people, it seems like, yeah, we want to sponsor, and then it's all about just doing the racing because racers are going to race, and you gotta work the sponsorship side, the marketing partner side, right? And you see all these young folks that come along, they're very well prepped. To a lot of people, to their chagrin, right? It's because it's not the way it used to be, but you can't afford to race the way we used to race. So what is it that you do expect from your professional team partners as you try to coordinate and this marketing agreement between them and the big companies?
Basically, I've got to know who I'm talking about first of all. I'm going to be working with Ida, and I'm going to have actually a Zoom call with her, I believe, later on this week. So I don't know her personally, but there's quite a few other people that I have worked with in the past who I know pretty much quite a bit about. But the nice thing now is most of these race teams have information that they can send me on the team, on the driver, and the wherewithal of what they have. And I know pretty much what I would say 99% of the teams have out there and what they're able to do. It is a little tough because sometimes marketing partners will come to the races and they have the owners that implement the programs at the races, and they really know nothing about the races. They don't know what's going on, how it works. They're thrown into the fire. So what I try to do is take them under my belt and say, listen, this is how things work and this is why it works. And normally the interaction with the team won't be much because they're always busy working. Trying to talk to a team member that's working on a car, you can forget that. They're in their zone. But as far as the driver and the owner, that they're pretty gracious, and they've got to understand that if I need them for a 10-minute meeting, they have to come. It's not something I can just blow off because I would never bring them in if it wasn't for a reason. And the only reason it'd be probably for would be to improve the program or answer a question that needs to be answered. Because I can't always answer the questions for the marketing partner. The marketing partner can tell me to do something, and when I go to the team owner, they ask me why, and I'm going to say because that's what they want. And sometimes that happens, and you just got to work with it. And there's no rocket science here. It's all about keeping people happy. And especially when you're doing hospitality, you got to make those people feel important. They're not standing outside the rope. They're not out in the 100 degrees weather. They're drinking a cool bottle of water or having a nice sandwich. So that stuff, that's like what they call race on Sunday and sell on Monday. So if you have hospitality, you're bringing people out there that normally are buying or connected with the product that is on the side of that race car. And you just, sometimes you got to handle them with kid gloves, but I think right now everybody is paying attention and everybody wants a marketing partner. And I think they're realizing what they have to do. Because like I said, you deal with some of these guys that have so much money, so then we got to get the driver involved. You can't get the crew chief. So the driver is the key component in anything we do out there. He's the key. And I don't know one snobbish driver out there. They're all pretty good guys.
Yeah, they're amazing. And you mentioned Ms. Zetterstrom, and we're talking to her about coming on. We almost had her this in January, but something fell through. We've been talking, so really looking forward to getting some of these great.
I'll be talking to her this week, so I'll definitely get that line going for you. I'll make sure.
Tell her Bill, John, and Kay said hello. We're looking forward to
do you mind if I give her your number? That's okay, correct?
Oh, certainly do. We've been emailing. So
I will definitely get that contact for you this week. And there's a lot of other people out there that if you ever think you want to talk to, that I could probably get to chime in and chat with you. And it's just interesting to hear. A lot of these guys have other businesses. Right. So when they're at the races, they're in their nice coach or they're in their trailer and they're doing their business, and they jump in the race car, the funny car, top car, they drive that and they go back and they do their business. Sure. Unfortunately, that's what it is. But you can still get those guys to come out and talk.
So sounds great. Good. Well, but I'm going to get it set up where you hear the phone ring. It's going to be me on the other end. We're going to.
You can call me anytime. I guess we've covered about everything that I'm looking on my list here, and I don't know if I have much more that I can cover. We talked about all the teams that I've done in the past, and I've talked about where I'm going. Reach out, guys, and I'll help you any way I can.
Sounds great. I want two things, and one's going to be short, one's going to be a little longer. One is to get that address of your website so that teams can reach out. Do you have that available already?
I do. It in a perfect world, it's going to be up by the end of the week, but I will give you my email too. So the website address is going to be Dynamic Marketing Partners 1.com. Okay. I don't know if they're throwing the www in front of it or not. I don't know how it's working these days.
It's there, but you never have to write it anymore. People just
so the website should be up and running by the end of the week. We have a lot of stuff we're putting on it, a lot of decks from teams, and a lot of people don't know what a deck is, but it's just an information file.
Like a PowerPoint, right? Is that?
Yes. So I'll have several of those up hopefully by the end of the week. Those have already been sent over to my website designer, and then my email address, my personal email address is dynamicdoug. DYNAMICDOUG @gmail.com. Isn't that? No. Is it Gmail? 1957. Oh, yeah, I forgot that. Dynamicdoug1957 @gmail.com. This is what happens when you hit 68. Dynamicdoug1957 @gmail.com.
Got it. Does Youngblood get a percentage of every time someone clicks that thing or what? For giving you the nickname?
Let's put it this way. I've known Kenny for a long time, and he's done a lot for me, and I've done a lot for him. And I think he knows at the end of the day, him and Terry will probably never go without as long as I'm alive. So we'll put it that way. Yeah.
So let's check it. We'll check in with John real quick and see if anybody has another thought. But I did want to connect you two, because I know something that nobody else knows. The three of us know it, but nobody else knows that. And it has to do with John playing music and you hosting events. But let's see if there's anybody on the chat with another thought, and then we'll go into the fun.
What you were just talking about, Doug, and obtaining sponsorships and so forth. Rich Panicaro posted, he said, I wish I knew all this stuff before I retired from racing. And Kay Thurkelson says, thank you for being our guest, Doug. And I second that. This has been a fantastic interview. And all of the information that you've given us is just amazing. I didn't know that you were involved in the Kima crawfish boil either, which is also amazing. So thank you.
Well, that was the next topic, though. So let's talk about it. So John played there, some music. And Doug, tell us about what you did down there in Texas. Some pretty amazing stuff.
The crawfish, first of all, I don't eat fish. I've never had a crawfish in my life. But I sure did sell millions and millions of pounds of it. But what happened was there was two of my buddies down in Texas. They wanted to form this festival business, and they wanted me to be a partner in it because they knew that I could market it, because they knew who I was in my racing. So we all agreed, and we were 33 and a third partners. We all put in a little bit of money at the beginning, and we needed more money. So one partner dropped out before we even did our first festival because he didn't have any more money to put in it. So then there was two of us. And then before the first festival, the second partner, he dropped out. Now, I didn't know anything at all about crawfish festivals. I was green as can be. But I put on my first festival in 2012, and it was okay. It wasn't spectacular because I really didn't know what I was doing. I had a lot of marketing partners in there because I knew how to do that. So that helped out quite a bit. And then the second year, it got a little better. And by the third year, by 2014, we were rocking and rolling with 20, 30,000 people in this festival. And what happened was, it's really funny. The first year had a lot of problems with the vendors getting the crawfish. I had 5 vendors in there, and they're 10 by 10 tents cooking crawfish, and they just couldn't get it done. The lines were astronomical. So after the first year, I said, I'm going to fix this. So I went and I bought a school bus up in Ohio for $6,500. And I bought a school bus because it has the fuel cell and stuff in it, so you don't have to worry about what you're going to do with it. So I bought the school bus and I drove it myself back down to Kemah, and I hired a couple of Hispanic gentlemen, 3 or 4 of them, I think. I said, make it look like a big pickup truck. And they just started cutting, and And I've got pictures of it. I'll share it one of these days with you. And they made it look like a pickup truck. So I took it over to Louisiana and took it to a gentleman over there named Randy Topher. He built pots and everything. I said, Randy, we want to make the largest crawfish cooker ever. I can't have people waiting in lines. So he built these big aluminum tubs and put the sinks and everything in it and cranes and everything going across the top. And make a long story short, we brought that to our next festival. We never really had any lines because that bus would cook 6,000 pounds of crawfish an hour. 6,000 pounds. Now, my 5 or 6 vendors couldn't cook 600 pounds an hour. So we really killed it with that. And about the third year was when I really caught my stride. Everything was working. It cost me, this is really an interesting factor. It cost me about $90,000 to run a festival. Prior to the festival opening the gates, I had normally the last 5 years, I had over 150,000 in the bank. So if it rained all 3 days, I would have made money. And the reason that is because my marketing skills kicked in, and my event was a 4-wall. So I had Budweiser, Miller, Coors, Modelo, you name it. They were fighting for the beverage rights for the beer. Then I had Pepsi and Coke and all that. They fought for the marketing rights. And then every car dealer, you name it, Ford, Chrysler, Chevy, there's down in Texas. I'm sure our friend knows a lot of them. Baytown Ford ended up being the longest sponsor, although I had an affiliation with Bruton Smith and he owned that dealership. So they were with us for they were with us for 10 years. But they were the one that picked up Wayne Toops. We had Wayne Toops down there for 10 years, and he was a moneymaker. I told Wayne, I said, we closed at 10 o'clock, but I said, if the bar's doing $7,500 an hour, let's just keep it open and I'm just going to pay you extra. And we stayed many times till 1 o'clock. John will remember playing there. I think they played one time for me, and I don't know why they didn't play more, but Pee Wee Bowen has got to be the nicest guy I've ever met. We actually had lunch, I believe. Me and him had lunch over at Jackie's Brick House. We had lunch over there, but do you remember playing there, John?
Hang on, let's unmute John. Hang on, I got you muted.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, I remember we played there twice.
Okay, there you go.
One time without horns and one time with horns. It was like 2 years in a row that we played, and I remember Bobby D. Sawyer was on before.
Yes.
He's a good friend of mine. He's a good guy. And yeah, it was a beautiful festival. We had a great time. Now, I have to confess, I have only eaten one crawfish. I never
got me beat. You got me beat.
Some of the guys
from Ohio, I've eaten more than that, guys. Holy cow.
Yeah, I mean, the guys in the band devoured crawfish, and we played shrimp boils too. But the thing about it is it gets on your fingers and you can't wash it off. And you play the gig, and then you put your guitar in the case, and then when you open it up a week later, it stinks to high heaven. These vinyl gloves, you know, to eat shrimp with. I love shrimp, but nah, crawfish, that's not for me.
That spice, John, that we used, I had it specially made. It was 89,000 habanero.
Oh my God!
My God!
Which this is a true story. You probably didn't know it, but all my soda booths had a blue ice chest there with a cross across it, and it had a big word called milk on it, because if anybody started choking or having a problem with the heat of the crawfish, you drank milk and that would fix it for you. And that was per the health department. They made me have my ice chests all over the place with milk in them.
Wow.
Now I
Well,
did eat
great.
potatoes and the corn on the cob, but I didn't eat the crawfish. It came in a box. You got a serving of it, and we enjoyed playing there. We had a very receptive crowd, and it was fun. The second time we played there, the weather was bad, but the first time we played there, I think we played there on a Saturday night, and we had this real nice stage, and it was all lit up, and they had a sound man out there and everything. It wasn't like playing some dive on Telephone Road, but it was a good time.
I'm glad you had a good time there.
Thank you. I
I
didn't know.
think Doug Davenport's shown tonight that almost everything he does is first class. And man, I tell you what, I had so much fun talking to you tonight. We learned so much. We went over a little bit, but it was well worth it. We warned you up front, folks. Doug, we'll keep in touch for sure, but I can't wait to hear how your efforts go with the NHRA. Everybody wants 16 card fields and more if we can get them, except for you don't want to be the 17th or 18th guy, but that's racing. But really, thanks for those efforts. And it's great to know you. And you've done just about everything in the sport, but you're really bringing us some money for the National Hot Rod Association this year. And I'd love to check in. Maybe we'll check in about 3/4 away, halfway through the year, and see what happened and what you were able to put together, if you wouldn't mind sharing.
Oh no, and I'll make sure that if something comes down the pipe, that you'll be one of the first ones. We'll get it emailed to you, or we'll get something to you, so you can do what you want with it. But your exposure for whoever I get, so I want to get them
There you
as
go.
much exposure as I can.
Yeah, we'll do that. Well, whatever your new guy or gal is, bring them on the Draglist Live here. We'll give them a platform and they can talk all about it.
That's going to be super. I'll put that in my wheelhouse, and I'm going to use it.
Sounds great. Doug Davenport, thank you so much. So nice to meet Deb tonight. All the best to her, and appreciate you for spending some time with us tonight. It's been a blast, and we will see you somewhere down the road.
I'm here for you guys whenever you need me.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, Doug Davenport's been there since it was about 5, I think, and is still taking care of us 70 years, 60 years later. I'm not trying to age you. Take care, sir. All the best.
All right. Thank you guys again. It's been a pleasure. John, nice seeing you again.
Nice seeing you again, Doug. Have a good one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Small world, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Saying goodbye to Doug Davenport. He was amazing. Let's turn it over to JB for this week's JB's Take. John?
Thanks, BP. In February of 2002, I had the thought that I hadn't seen anything about fuel alters in a while. I did a search online and a link showed up called Those Awful Fuel Alters. I clicked on it and an article in Photo Gallery showed up that was linked to a website called Draglist.com. I said, that looks interesting. So I clicked on the link, and from that moment on, my life changed. Draglist was an unabridged encyclopedia of drag racing from the beginning up until current times. I was hooked. I signed up and made a post in the forum in a thread started by Jim Folke called The First Time I Smelled Nitro. I remembered it after making that post, a guy named Bill Pratt commented positively on my post, and I found myself walking into a whole new phase of my life. We became friends. He recognized that I had artistic ability, and before too long, I started contributing graphics to Draglist. And now I'm the art director. The next 23 years flew by in a heartbeat. It's difficult to pick out a single event and incidents that have been part of a roller coaster ride through the amazing experience that Draglist has gifted me. I can name a few: the Draglist Nationals, where the contributors to the Draglist Forum would get together at a drag racing event and spend a few days having fun. I've made lifelong friends with these great people from all over the world. We're a family. This show, we're in our 15th year. I've been able to meet and hang out with the world's top drag racers. I never imagined I'd have such an opportunity, as well as the drag racing legends. I've also had a fantastic time with my Racers of the Week. I went worldwide with that project in 2014. And now I have racers in 14 countries. They're all great people and dedicated drag racers. Our super crew has lost some folks who are near and dear to our hearts. Barb Santucci, Bud Mr. Drag News DeBoer, George Hutchinson, Wally Bell, Larry Clayton, Boyd Wiley, Jack Garl, Heidi Arnold, Bunny Burkett, and my great friend and BPs as well, the awesome Danny White. I want to send special thanks to Jeff and Dustin Gilder of Racers Reunion Radio for giving us our start at this endeavor in 2010. They have been a tremendous influence on our evolving presentation. And the man behind the greatest drag racing source of information in the world, who gave me this fantastic adventure, my brother Bill Pratt. Thank you. Long story short, I can't remember what I did before I joined Draglist. My life changed when I found it. I look forward to another 23 years. It's been a wonderful party. Everybody stay safe, and you're the most important part of this show, and we love you all. It's a great way to spend an hour together on a Monday night. And we'll see y'all next time. God bless America. Back to you, BP.
Thank you, John. And it's great to know you, my brother. Time has flown. It seems like just yesterday. I can't believe how fast it's gone. I can't believe the friends we've lost, but the friends we've made, we've lost some, but they're all still here in our hearts. Let's talk about some more friends coming up. So next Monday night, first of all, another very special friend. I want to do a special notice now. So our dear friend Norman Blake, who I've known for decades, one of the top photographers in the sport, taken great care of us, as so many others do, by sending us tons and tons of his work to share here on Draglist. Norman has had some medical issues recently. There is a GoFundMe page up on the Draglist Facebook page. If you have an opportunity to drop a couple bucks on Norman's way, thanks very much. We love Norman Blake. He's an awesome guy. And I just wanted to highlight that. And we send our best, and we want you to get better. Our Miss Kay as well has been out there taking great care of us, but having a few medical issues of her own. And so I hope you get better soon, my friend. But speaking of Miss Kay, thanks to her, we have another great guest. Of course, she helped bring us Mr. Davenport tonight. And next Monday night, announcer and all-around fun guy, Mike English, joined us tonight. Get ready to rock, folks, if we're going to have a rollicking good time. Mike English and Pete Moriello and I and many others had an awesome time out at Irwindale, just cracking up, and he's always fun. So he's been on the show before. He's going to come on again, and it's going to be a rocking good time. Next Monday night, February 10th, announcer Mike English is going to come take us there. And let's go on to those we lost. I just have one name to report tonight, and I'm glad of that, but not glad for the person we lost. Thanks to Jerry Cook, our dear friend from England, who shared the British door slammer racer Al Cook, who goes back several decades, but it raced right up until the modern era as well in a super fast door slammer car, passing away on January 29th. So farewell to Al Cook. Condolences to his family, many friends, and thanks for the memory, sir. That's our show. And before we do a wrap, John, I would go to you for your final wrap thoughts of the show. You did an amazing. Thanks so much for your kind words on Draglist. It's been an honor knowing you, sir. But if we can narrow it down to the show tonight, what are your thoughts for tonight before we say farewell?
Pete Moriello just said it was a very enjoyable show. He said, but anyone but Mike. Yeah. And Kay said, thank you for the get well wishes on the road to recovery. Rich Panicaro said it was a very interesting show, and I couldn't agree more. Doug Davenport is a fascinating person. I want to just hang out with that guy because I've learned so much from everything that he said tonight. It was stuff that I never knew before.
Right.
But he works behind the scenes, and he doesn't require money to do it. He can get money for other people. Now, I've known a couple of people like that in my life, and he's definitely one of them. It takes a very special person to do that. Yeah, this was a fine show, and I'm looking forward to having Mike back with us. I remember the last time Mike was on it, Pete came on and said, could you please mute Mike's microphone?
Imagine that live for a weekend. I had a fabulous time out in Irwindale. I look forward to getting together with these guys again soon sometime. But highly recommend it to all if you have the opportunity. Thank you, John. And let's go do our final wrap. I want to thank Doug Davenport for coming on. He was amazing. John Bockelman, my brother, and talking about our fabulous history here together. Kay Turkelson, who is just doing an amazing job at lining up guests for us. Also, the mini super crew who are keeping the drag lists up to date. Rob McCabe, Mel Bashore, and Ron Toombs. Thank you, guys. Lots of great drag list entries every single week by these three. And thanks to the big man, Danny White, and that they are. It takes three guys to fill what Danny used to do. And just kidding. Ron and Mel and have always been out there helping us out, as well as so many other international volunteer supporters. The Draglist, worldwide Draglist Super Crew Army. I love it, guys. But thanks to all. I want to thank Jeff Gilder of Zeus Digital Marketing, Racers Reunion Radio, and Wingding Media for getting us started back in 2010. Click the share button, folks. Also, go way up top. I think it's on the right-hand side on your YouTube channel. I'm not seeing that right now, but I think you can subscribe there. I have noticed a lot of new subscribers popping up, so I hope we meet more and more folks to come join us and see these outstanding shows. Do check in on draglist.com daily to see what's new. Lots of great news from around the world for drag racing every single day, plus many features. So looking forward to bringing you more. And then finally, before we say our final farewell, see you next Monday night for Mike English. Until then, I'm going to click the magic farewell button here.